What would the media reaction have been in 2016 if, when Donald Trump was president, he had sent 20 FBI agents into Hillary Clinton's home and they had raided and seized documents inside of her home? The mainstream media, if that had happened, would have said that Donald Trump was a dictator, that he was an authoritarian, that he was helming a banana republic, and that the United States had become a third world country. Joe Biden does it to Donald Trump, and almost everyone in that mainstream media has been carrying the water of the Department of Justice, saying this was justified. You just heard me laying out what's actually at stake in this dispute between the Department of Justice and Donald Trump. It's documents that were, at minimum, we know, specifically referenced in this New York Times article, presuming that it's coming directly from the Department of Justice. Kim Jong-un letters, Barack Obama's letter to the president. There may be other documents that he took with him that the National Archives wants to put as part of their presidential records acts there. But how in the world, you just heard that dispute. We know that Russia collusion was a hoax. We know that impeachment 1 and impeachment 2, that they failed over and over again to get Donald Trump. The January 6 hearings have landed flat. But all of those were more significant disputes. They are desperate now inside of the Democrat Party, so desperate to get Donald Trump that they are now wildly exaggerating a relatively minor issue over where old papers are stored, either with President Trump or inside of the National Archives, to such an extent that Merrick Garland, whose only job as Attorney General is to exercise good faith and solid judgment, that's the job of the Attorney General, as it pertains to influencing and impacting and implementing our laws. That's his only job. He has made the most significant overreach and the most indefensible decision in our lives, something that no attorney general has ever done before. He signed off on a warrant to raid the top political adversary of his boss, Joe Biden. And he did that to a former president who likely will be the nominee running for president again. And in so doing, he has set in place a precedent that does not end here. It is now potentially going to be followed by attorney generals in the years ahead. And for that reason, Merrick Garland cannot remain in office. He should be removed. At minimum, he should resign. And there should be a full investigation into how he came to make the decision to allow these warrants to take place. What Donald Trump did, despite the front page of the New York Times and what you're going to see if you put on MSNBC and put on CNN, is actually not unprecedented at all. For hundreds of years, presidents have taken the papers that they were involved in as president, and they've taken it back to their houses and back to their homes. And they've used those papers to write books about their presidency. And it wasn't even until the late 1970s, in response to Richard Nixon, that this presidential papers dispute ever became an issue at all. And it hasn't ever been applied as it is being applied, certainly by Attorney General Merrick Garland. And there's actually a fantastic Wall Street Journal editorial this morning by David Rivkin and Lee Casey. These are two guys who served in the Justice Department and the White House counsel's office in the Reagan and Bush senior administrations. And the headline is, "The Trump warrant had no legal basis." These are astute, learned scholars who have worked in the White House counsel saying there's no basis at all for the Trump warrant to have been issued. And this is Merrick Garland's Waterloo. I really cannot impress upon you enough that the radical, unprecedented, indefensible act here was not being committed by Donald Trump at all. It It was the Attorney General of the United States signing this warrant and allowing his agents to storm the gates of Mar-a-Lago that has upset the entire precedent of American judicial life. We use the phrase unprecedented quite a lot. Generally, it's not true because for most situations, there is a precedent. This is truly unprecedented. What Merrick Garland did has never been done before in the history of the United States. No time ever. Dating all the way back to George Washington, also including George W. Bush, all the way up to now, has a former president been raided by the Department of Justice at his private residence. This has never occurred. And it's not just even a former president. It's the former president who's going to be running against the current president, potentially. Merrick Garland failed in his judgment to such an extent. I told you that there's no way he should be able to oversee this investigation because he's investigating. And you may have heard a great interview that we did with Alan Dershowitz last week, where Alan Dershowitz said, look, there's no way that any attorney general could do this because the attorney general has essentially two jobs. He's serving the president in such a manner that hopes to continue that president's tenure so that he's going to be reelected so that the attorney general can continue to serve, and simultaneously supposed to be the unbiased enforcer of American law. Well, Merrick Garland, who was supposed to be this moderate guy, has unleashed a whirlwind here. Because if Donald Trump wins election in 2024, would it be crazy for Trump, in response to what happened to him with Merrick Garland, to choose an attorney general who would sign off on a raid on Joe Biden's house? And certainly we know Hunter Biden's house. Evidently, the White House can't manage to do an FBI raid of Hunter Biden, even though we know he's committed potentially dozens of felonies. But I just want you to think for a moment about what Merrick Garland did. And one way to easily think about this is, what would the media reaction have been in 2016 if, when Donald Trump was president, he had sent 20 FBI agents into Hillary Clinton's home and they had raided and seized documents inside of her home? The mainstream media, if that had happened, would have said that Donald Trump was a dictator, that he was an authoritarian, that he was helming a banana republic, and that the United States had become a third world country. Joe Biden does it to Donald Trump, and almost everyone in that mainstream media has been carrying the water of the Department of Justice, saying this was justified. I just want you to put the shoe on the other foot, as a good attorney would ask you to do, and as Merrick Garland failed to do. Because his job is to ensure that justice is filled, but also not to set precedents that allow this country to fall further behind political impulses of justice. Instead, he did the exact opposite. And for that reason, if Joe Biden had a scintilla of intelligence, if Joe Biden had a scintilla of cognition, if he knew about this raid at all beforehand, he is culpable for it. But if we take him at his word and he did not know, then the moment that Joe Biden found out what Merrick Garland did, he should have demanded his resignation. That's what Joe Biden would have done if he had any character or decorum at all, because the precedent that has been set here is going to unleash whirlwinds, and we're going to turn more and more into these countries that we had hoped that we were better than when it came to our democracies. In other countries, Kenya, for instance, right now, where they're having a massive presidential election, one reason why you feel like you have to win an election is because if you lose, you know that the political party that comes into power will take advantage of not only you and your family, they will use the apparatus of government to go after you. That is now what's happening in the United States. Merrick Garland isn't fit for duty. Every Republican should be demanding his resignation. And one of the first things that should happen when the Republicans take back control of the House is Merrick Garland should be hauled in front of the House Judiciary Committee at minimum and forced to answer all of these questions. And this affidavit in its entirety, I'm not even willing. When I read all the details in this New York Times story, I'm not even willing to give the government any basis for redactions at all because they're leaking this information to the New York Times. It's all out there publicly anyway. The entire affidavit, the entire thing, every word should be made public, and it should happen this week.